Hey, everybody. I want to thank you so much for listening to Our Kids Play Hockey, especially this time of year when it's hot outside. And we got a new thing we're doing right now. We have created a new hockey ball in part with Milek Hockey. These are low bounce hockey balls. They are perfect for the summer. And here's the best part. When you buy a 3-pack of these at hockeywraparound.com or amazon.com, we are going to be donating a day's worth of meals for a puppy in need at the ASPCA. Only when you buy these balls. Again, they're called the My Ball by Hockey Wraparound. You can get them at hockeywraparound.com or amazon.com. Every purchase donates a day's worth of meals for a dog in need via the ASPCA. But without further ado, we want to thank you for listening to Our Kids Play Hockey. We're going to jump right into the episode. Check out that promotion, hockeywraparound.com, amazon.com. Just search My Ball by Hockey Wraparound and help a good boy out there. Enjoy the episode. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this edition. Quick summation of the episode you're about to listen to. Mike and I have just a tremendous conversation here about how to deal with the pressure from coaches, parents, and scouts. It's based off of a letter we got from a parent. And I'm not going to lie to you. This was one of my favorite discussions that I've had on Our Kids Play Hockey. A real deep dive into kind of, hey, what is pressure to begin with, right? What does it mean to a kid? What does it mean to a coach, a parent, a scout from both directions? And I think we give some real actionable items to take, or really just to ponder on, to kind of resonate with, to think about how to deal with this really important topic within youth hockey. So that's what you're going to hear about today. Obviously, we always thank you for taking part in these episodes. And remember, I say it throughout the episode today, email us with questions or anything throughout this episode. If you have thoughts, at team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. But without further ado, let's start this really awesome music and dive into the episode. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome back to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Mike, I'm not going to lie to you. I love saying that every single week. And as you guessed, I'm here with Mike Bonelli. I'm Elias. We got a really interesting topic today. This is going to come from a letter from one of our listeners. I can tell you right now, the topic of the show is how to deal with pressure from coaches, parents, and scouts. And we titled it that because this letter was so well written, so to the point that we had to address it. And I know this is a topic of conversation for all of you out there, whether you're a parent, coach, scout, or kid, that the information from this episode is going to be very applicable. So I'm going to read the letter. I'm going to explain kind of quickly how Mike and I are going to dive into this, because this is one of those topics that could be multiple episodes, but we're going to try our best to compact it into within an hour here. And if we need to do more, we'll do more. But here comes the letter. Here we go. Says, "Good morning, coaches. I have a question request. On your podcast, can you talk about players getting so intimidated by coaches, scouts, and even parents? My son shrinks on the ice once he knows that someone will be watching him. It has been the biggest challenge for my son for a long time, and it's all mental. I would love to hear your advice and opinions. I feel so bad for these kids. They just want to play the sports they love, but they need to deal with massive amounts of stress and pressure." That is maybe the most Our Kids Play Hockey letter we've ever gotten, Mike.
Yeah, and it's not one letter. I mean, that in a whole bunch of different forms, whether it's conversation, text messages, a letter, Facebook post, Instagram DM, we get that reiteration of that question
Right.
a lot, and at every age group, which is alarming. And it's also good, I guess, that people are aware of it and noticing it. And it would be interesting, down the road to hear how different parents approach this with their kids.
Yeah, well, I think you make a really good point too, in the sense that this manifests itself differently for every kid and every family, because everybody deals with the emotional side of the game a little bit differently, right? I do want to start off just broadly saying this, that, and this is my opinion, obviously I got to say that the emotion, the stress, a lot of that stuff is an opportunity for your kid and you to grow, right? It's an opportunity to learn some of the pressures that life provides. With that said, I kind of, this is me, right? I have a line that can be crossed, right? Where it's not an opportunity and it becomes a hindrance to the kid, to the family, to the coach, right? That line is usually drawn when it's becoming personal, when it's not striving the kid to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
From a parent standpoint, when it becomes more about the parent than the kid. I feel like I have a pretty strong compass on that. And again, like I said at the beginning, it's different for every family, right? What I think is okay, it's very possible another family might not think that. So you got to remember that while Mike and I are sharing our advice today, these are our opinions, right? You can have your own opinions, and please feel free to share those opinions. Email us, team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. This podcast is a discussion. And while I do appreciate people consider us experts, and I would consider us experts too, Mike, we are just two hockey parents out there
Yeah.
navigating the waters of a chaos and trying to make it peaceful.
Yeah, and
So,
coaching these kids, like we're in it. We're as parents and scouts and coaches and
right.
fans. You're in the whole mix of the whole thing, especially at the youth hockey level, because a lot of times you play all these different roles, with other people's kids,
Right.
and your own kids.
Right.
So
And
it's
I'll say this too, Mike, that as a coach, and again, I can only speak for myself, and I mean, I'd bucket you in with this. Parents, you don't realize how much we care about your kids. You care about your kid more than anybody else, but I can tell you as a coach, I deeply care for the kids I coach as people, as hockey players. They matter to me, right? Again, I can say that about me. I can definitely say that for Mike. I can't say that for every coach that's ever coached. So, look, this is how this show is going to work. The letter asked about coaches, parents, and scouts. We're going to dive into each one of those. We're going to try and give perspective from both the player and the coach's perspective, or parent or scout, to kind of give a full 360 of what these people may be thinking, to hopefully arm you out there listening with some tactics or some information, some knowledge here about how to approach them. So I think we start with probably the big one, which is coaches, because that's how the letter was talked about. And I want to start here, Mike, because this really is a two-way street, right? And I think that one of the most important things for kids coming into an environment with coaches, no matter the level, is to really know how you're motivated. Okay. And what I mean by that is this: everyone's motivated slightly differently. Some players are motivated by kind of being ribbed a little bit and a coach getting on them. Some players are motivated not by that, but by the arm around the shoulder kind of attitude of, hey, listen, we can do better. Some players are motivated by a mix. Some players are motivated by hard work. Some players are motivated by learning. It's important you know, as the player, what motivates you, so you can effectively, and effectively is a key word here, communicate that to the coach, right? If a coach does not know how you are motivated, it's going to be very hard for them to motivate you. Now, adversely, coaches, and this is one of the first questions I ask when I work with teams, especially in a team building situation. I ask, do you know how each individual player on your team is motivated? And Mike, 95% of the time, the answer is no. And I retort with, then how the hell are you motivating them? If you don't know how your players are motivated, I don't see how you can do an effective job. And this is my last thought of this, Mike. I'm going to throw it to you. Do not ever assume, this is a pitfall that I see a lot of coaches fall into, parents too, for that matter. Do not ever assume the way you are motivated is the way everyone is motivated. You have got to step outside of your mind a little bit and become conscious that if you're 55 years old and you think that getting yelled at or ribbed by your coaches every day while you were growing up is the right way, don't do that. That might have been the right way for you. God bless you if it was. It doesn't mean it's the right way for everybody, and you can't convey that. A great coach will adapt and understand how their players are motivated. It does not mean you have to go quote unquote soft on a player. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you need to know how they're motivated. If little Johnny is motivated by not being screamed at, I don't think you help yourself by screaming at little Johnny, all right, or whatever name you want to put in there. All right, you got to know. It doesn't mean Johnny doesn't need to be pushed. It doesn't mean Johnny doesn't need a stern talking to. It doesn't mean Johnny doesn't need to know when he's made mistakes, but you got to know how to motivate them so they'll learn. Mike, I'm saucing the puck to you.
Yeah, no, it's a lot to unpack, right? Because there's so much in there that from a coaching perspective, like if you're not do like if you, and this is goes right back to the nature and the mechanics of youth hockey. if you're working with a team and every 5 months you blow the team up and trade coaches and trade players and trade organizations, how can you know what motivates a kid? Like it's so hard to find out, how a kid ticks sometimes
Yeah.
and by the time you finally get to know them, and I go back to this a lot on these episodes, is that that's why I loved coaching in college and in prep school and high school,
Yeah.
is because you had the kids for such a
Get those
long
kids for
time.
multiple years.
You got to be like, wow, I could really tweak this kid. Like I could really make this work, or I could really bury this kid if I keep going this direction. Like it's just, there's a lot of ways you could go about it. And I think hockey directors and youth hockey organizations, they could probably benefit by helping their coaches, understand that, hey, I know, you haven't seen this kid through 8U and 10U, but now you're coaching them. But this is like this is what I've seen. So if you're a coach, and you haven't had the opportunity to do your team building exercises or do a survey or have an interview with the kid or sit down with the mom and dad, and these are all time consuming things at youth hockey. They're really, really hard to do.
And really
And find
important.
time. But they're really
Like,
important. But
yeah.
most people will say the excuse will be, I don't have the time for that. Like,
Well, Mike, I'm going to tell you, and I am going to step in here. I don't accept that excuse with the teams that I work with and the coaches that I work with, and I'll tell you why. It goes back to the title of this episode. We're talking about alleviating pressure. The
right,
easiest way, I mean, by miles, and I do consider myself an expert on this, the easiest way to alleviate this pressure by light years is day one, establishing trust with those kids. And then also probably day one or week one, asking the question, what motivates you? How are you motivated? Kid might say, I don't know. That's okay, because you've established some trust here. You've established some level of congruence here of, hey, listen, we're going to work through this together. If you don't do that, you are really making more problems than you two. So Mike, to you, again, I'm saying this. Coaches, you have the time. Make the time, because you're going to waste time, a lot more of it, if you don't do this. And I wrote it down. Trust, have a meeting. How are you motivated? You can do this as young as 8 years old. If you want, you don't have to do it at 8U, but you can. If you're not doing this at 18U, I don't know what you're doing. The other thing I wrote down here for the kids, and I just mentioned this, Mike, that they may not know how they're motivated. Parents and coaches, great question to ask your kid. Hey, what feels right? What feels good when you're coaching? Right? You'll be surprised. There will be kids that say, well, I like it when you get on me a little bit. Kids will say that. Okay, I like it when you do that. And there's a whole nother conversation that comes with that. Don't get me wrong. But figure it out. And your motivations may change over time. Okay, because I'll tell you right now, when you're 10 years old getting pushed and 18-year-old getting pushed, those are very different types of being pushed.
yeah,
Okay. So I'm just saying, Mike, and again, I apologize if I cut you off there. I'm just saying you have the time. You better make the time to figure this out. You want to alleviate pressure, build trust. Build it immediately and then maintain it. You want to create pressure, break that trust. You'll create more pressure. You can live the most pressure. You'll have the most pressure, the best pressure if you want to do that.
right. And it's the reason why we get these kind of notes, right? Because of the fact that we don't follow those principles, and coaches don't establish those norms that they should have. Like
Right.
where, like, instead of hosting the first tournament, maybe like host the first team meeting and say, hey, listen,
Right.
this is a really important piece of what we do, and the core values of our team are going to formulate from this. But I need to know my team. I need to know you. And so if you feel like, oh, this is a missable event, or you're a parent that doesn't subscribe to the fact that this is a very important piece of your own child's development, forget about the team's development, your own child's development, then it goes back to the old buyer beware and be careful where you go. And you chose the coach and you chose the organization.
Right.
Do your research. If you find out this coach never talks to people, that he doesn't do team meetings, that he doesn't, then just don't go there. I mean, just find a way to get out of a place like that. And now, if you're a coach who hasn't done these things and you wonder why in December, people are looking for other organizations and having all this internal strife, then maybe just, this year is a good year to implement these things. And how can it hurt? I mean,
It's not
the
hard.
bottom line is it can only help you.
It's not as hard as you think. I'll also say this too, Mike. A good a good gauge. We went negative there, which is okay. A good gauge, if you're doing this right, is other organizations will want you to coach there. right? And I've had that happen. Like, hey, why don't you come coach at this organization? Because this
Right.
organization is a lot closer to my house. That's why I'm doing this one. But
Yeah,
like,
and
that's also a good sign. People will
they
want
see
you
the
here.
positive piece of it, and that's
Yeah.
huge.
Well, and I think too that another gauge, Mike, and I know this has happened to you, is and it's happened to me too, right? Kids will leave your organization for whatever reason, right? There's lots of different reasons, or they'll just graduate or whatever, but they still contact you. I have college kids that I've coached that have kids of their own now that still contact me, and it probably is the greatest compliment I think you can get as a coach when someone you coached when they were 20 or 18 or even younger calls you at 30 something. It's like, hey, coach, like you can call me Lee. Yeah, so coach, listen, that's how those conversations go. Um, but yeah, look, I'll say this too before we're not jumping into the parents just yet, but a lot of the thoughts that we're talking about with coaches and parents are interchangeable. All right, because parents, I got to tell you, you are your kid's top coach. We can't touch you with that. You spend more time with them, you've done more with them. At the end of the day, from a coaching standpoint, I'm using the word a little bit as a stretch here. You're their best coach. You're their number one coach. So just remember this applies to you. Another note I wrote down here, Mike, from this is for the player perspective. Players, you got to remember this from a pressure standpoint. You inadvertently, and I was guilty of this when I played heavily. You just think the coach is thinking about you, right? The coach is thinking about the summation of the team. All right. It's a really hard job. You got to balance that. Sometimes some kids need more attention than others. But when you're the player, you're the kid, you're constantly typically wondering, why is coach not paying attention to me? And what I would say from a pressure standpoint, do an audit of that thought. Are they really not paying attention to you? So look, I've always said this: when a coach is not talking to you, not even acknowledging you, you're in trouble. That's when you need to be worried. So if a coach is on you all the time and a coach is pushing you all the time, it's not necessarily the worst thing that can happen. That means that they obviously care. They want something out of you. All right. There's something there. When there's no communication, that's when you have to start to worry. With that said, do an audit of it. Is coach not focused on you, or is coach doing their job with the entire team and focused on the entire team? Okay. Look, I would love it if someone watched every shift I ever played and analyzed me down to a T so I could learn. That's the type of person I was. But there's 5 people on the ice, then another one with the goalie. Coach is watching all that, more likely thinking about what do I have to put on the ice next, because we can't go on the ice with you, right? So you got to remember that, kids. A coach is doing a lot during the season, during a game, during a practice. It is not possible for us to only focus on one player. Believe me, if we could, we would, because it would make our jobs very easy, right? But Mike, look, you're obviously the consummate coach. I mean, your thoughts on this? Because look, coaching's hard and balancing, and we know you want the attention, we know, all right, but it's just not possible for one person to do that.
Yeah, I think some players have to understand too. Maybe you're not getting ignored so much, but think about it like being in the classroom, right? You're in a classroom of 18 kids, and there's a whole dichotomy of different people in that classroom for the teacher. And coaches is the same way. And sometimes what we do is we go down, an inexperienced coach or a coach that maybe, doesn't have a good handle on, how the team's formulated. We'll always go to the lowest common denominator. And then now you're dealing with the joker in the room. You're dealing with the troublemaker. You're dealing with the kid that's disrupting
That's a
the
great
class.
point.
You're dealing with the kid that's falling behind, and the other kids aren't getting attention because they're doing fine.
Yeah.
Like they're doing okay. Are you excelling those kids? Maybe not. But that's the nature of the beast as a coach. And good coaches find a way to motivate that one kid that doesn't seem to be able to be motivated.
Right.
And listen, sometimes you can't. Sometimes, we'll get to this with the parent piece, but sometimes your ability to want to motivate and find the ways to tweak the kid, if they're not aligned with the messaging they're getting outside of you, then sometimes those worlds, they collide and they don't work well, because somebody's going to win that battle of how you want to motivate your kid, whether through fear or favor or whatever it is. There's going to be a reason why that happens. But when as in this perspective of a player, don't always look at it as, oh, coach never talks to me. Well, the coach probably thinks, oh my God, this kid's doing great. Like
That's true.
I just don't have the time because I'm dealing with all the knuckleheads on my team right now. I'm a volunteer. I'm only here for a little bit. I'm trying to deal with these kids because I got to keep them on my team somehow to make a team. So the kid that I'm not talking to, which I love, is just I'm not getting to that kid.
Well, and
Now,
Mike, let me
on
tell
the
you this.
coach's side, you
Yeah.
got to make sure you get on that, make sure you get that touch point.
Right. Well, and look, this is also where assistant coaches come in, and associate coaches come in. But like, look, I've had coaches say to me what I'm about to say, like, I shouldn't have to say that. And look, you can take that approach, but I'm a big believer of like the things that are unsaid sometimes make bigger problems. We're talking about pressure. So, Mike, to that kid you're just talking about, the kid that we're not paying attention to, but we love, right? I always tell coaches in that situation, you can empower that kid. And it's real simple. You just sit them down and say, listen, I know I'm not talking to you as much as you probably like, but that's because I trust you. That's because you're doing your job. And I need to continue to trust you. This is part of your role to do a good job because it's going to affect the whole team. I tell you a quick story. And I actually wrote this in one of my books that perhaps the most important player on your team. I'll ask that. Who do you think the most important player on your team is? And the common answers are, well, goalie or my top scorer does all this. And I said, they're very important players. The most important player on your team is the kid that does not have the talent, but works harder than everyone else. Because that kid sets the standard for work ethic for the entire team. And I always look to enable that kid. And here's the conversation. It's a tough conversation. It's look, you're not going to play that much. And again, we're talking higher levels here, right? I mean, I'm not talking AU right now. You're not going to play as much as the other guys. I will give you shifts, but I've had situations where this guy gets 1-2 shifts a game. And I said, I'm entrusting you with the hardest job on this team, which is to outwork your teammates at practice, knowing you will only get 2 shifts. And I tell them, Mike, we will win because of you, because of the standard that you set, because you're going to push our top players to work harder than they've ever thought, because you work harder than they do. Now, listen, if you get in a situation where your top player is that guy, God bless you. That's the golden situation. You can't ask for more than that. But I want the player on our team that works the hardest to set the bar for everybody else. That's the most important player on your team. And you have to enable that person. Because, Mike, I've seen the opposite of this where that person gets nothing, no talking. You know what starts to happen? You can all guess it at home. Why am I working so hard? Why do I need to do this? Right? Coach is not even acknowledging me. Now, look, you can question the character of that person. That's another episode. My point is, as a coach, we need to bring the best out of all of our players. You want to enable that player. And it's not so much so you can compare and say, why aren't you skating as fast as this guy? It's just you put that kid in a position to succeed, right? The players will naturally start to work hard. And if they start not to, coach them. All right. But I'll also, Mike, the messages. Mike, you've heard me say this a million times. I end every one of my videos that I do online with one statement, which is, I believe in you. You should too. And I say that because it's not said enough. And we underestimate, as people, as coaches, as society, how much kids need to hear that. I believe in you. Coaches listening, parents listening. When is the last time you told your kids you believe in them? I'm not talking about I love you. I believe that you say that to them. When is the last time you told them I believe in you? Coaches, do not underestimate how far that goes, how much it fills a kid up when they say, hey, coach believes in me. You want to alleviate pressure. The messaging is important. Coaches, if that's not your style, I'm not going to argue that. You got assistant coaches. They can say it. Yeah. Someone's got to say it. All right. I watched the team last season, Mike. I don't think that was said one time to the whole team. And you could see them slowly deteriorating. And they started strong and they ended horribly because they had no belief in themselves. Yeah. Right? Could have been started day one. So again, I'm on a soapbox a little bit here. I'm very passionate about this topic. But you want to alleviate pressure, trust the messaging, communicate, understand how they're motivated. Kids, you need to know how you're motivated. I firmly believe in a controlled open door policy for coaches where, keeping in mind the 24-hour rule or when emotions are high, you shouldn't do it. Coaches, your door should always be open for your players, especially the young ones. And parents, you should encourage your player, even at 8 years old, if you have a problem, to speak to that coach. You should absolutely say, I'm not feeling right. Can I talk to you for 15 minutes? And coaches, if you turn them away, which you should never do, I don't think most of you would, this is on you. All right. But I would tell the kids and the parents, my door's open. Obviously, give me an appropriate amount of time. I would like to talk to your kids, parents, but we're going to segue to parents in a minute, because at the end of the day, Mike, and this will be my closing thought, I'll let you have yours. The job is not to make them great hockey players. The job is to make them great people. Great people become great hockey players. If we're not teaching the kids the life lessons they need to survive, we are failing at coaching horrendously in youth hockey. Obviously, when you get to college and pro, this is a different conversation.
Yeah.
But we are failing these kids. If that is not your lead approach to coaching, I'll say it's my opinion, but I believe it to be true. You are failing these kids horrifically. All right. Hockey is part of it. It's not the goal. The goal is to make them good people. You want to alleviate pressure? Teach them how to deal with pressure. Parents, I'm talking to you. We'll segue in a minute. I'm going to let Mike have his final thought.
Yeah, I was going to say, and really the core for youth hockey, right, is because and I've had this argument before that it's hard for me to put in a system where I can help develop great people in a short amount of time for what I have them. Now, again, it's a great goal, and it's a great, and if you can do it, do it. If that's part of your mission, do it. But I think more realistically for most of us as coaches, I just want to coach so kids come back and play again next year.
Sure.
So, and again, that I think the byproduct of that will be you're going to start producing better people because they're going to be happier and they're going to be more motivated and they're going to have more passion for the game. And with passion, hopefully comes some controlled emotional piece, right? So all of that kind of stuff works, I think. And I think that sometimes, talk about putting pressure on coaches. I mean, sometimes putting a pressure on a coach to say, well, you need to make these kids better people. And I'm like, well, those two parents that are with that kid are jackasses.
Right.
Like, I don't even like they're not good people themselves. So, again, we want to make good people. We want to create great teammates. But as a coach, your core obligation and mission and goal is not to make great hockey players, but to make these kids want to come back.
Sure.
And if they can come back, I just think the ball rolls down the hill from there. I mean, now, okay, yeah, if you come back and you're not getting kicked out of the organization, you are becoming a better person.
I agree, Mike.
So all of those kind of things are happening. But ultimately, coaches, if you're going to take this, I take a lot of pride in being a coach of children and adults and the sport. But if you're going to take that mantle, then just do all those best practices that are going to help all of us in the coaching world succeed. And that's create better people, create motivated and passionate athletes, and create kids that want to keep coming back for more. And if you can do all those things, you're going to alleviate a lot of these other issues around your teams.
Mike, you bring up a great point. I'm going to pay you a compliment here too. You're right. We, as coaches, we're talking coaches still, we have such a little amount of time with these kids. But Mike, I know you pretty well, and I know some people that you've coached. And I'll tell you this, that they don't come up to me when I talk about you, because I get to talk about you a lot. And then I'll go, he taught me how to take a snapshot, man. He taught me the way to take a snap. They talk about how you made them feel. They talk about how you believed in them, right? That's what people say about you. So I'm confirming what you're saying about them wanting to come back. But whether you call it a byproduct or not, you are making them better people, right? I think for you, Mike, this comes so naturally as a coach, and I really feel this way about you, that you're doing that without thinking, the better people thing, right? Which allows you actually to focus on the hockey side of things even more. But I'm telling you, I have spoken to people anytime I bring up your name, because I get to talk about this podcast all the time. No one has said, Mike taught me how to play a 1-3-1 better than anyone that I've ever. They don't say that.
Thank you, but I think, but again, that's a byproduct of the good coaches I had,
right,
and my parents, and I know that my kids hate it. You don't leave a locker room without it being the cleanest.
I'm the same way
in the state now, and that has nothing to do with me being above anybody else. It's just like, this is the right thing to do, guys. Somebody else, me, has to clean that locker room.
That's the key.
Somebody else is doing this for you to be here. And whether you throw your bag in the back of a car and throw your sticks into the brand new Audi, or you're watching kids get just completely just leave their skates in the middle of the locker room. Mom and dad just bought them a $600 pair of skates and there's no care for them, and but again, if you can instill these qualities, and I think going back to the original question, right? If those are those are all opportunities to communicate with kids
Right.
and then find out what motivates them. If what
Right.
motivates them, if one of the pieces as a coach that motivates my kids is, hey guys, you know what? You're gonna play less, or there's a punishment, or there's something when I come in and this locker room looks the way it looks. Like, this is disgusting. Like, this is the place that this is your home, and this is how you're gonna treat it. Well, there's gonna be consequences to that.
Right.
Like,
Right.
so if the next day they come for practice and they're not allowed to use the locker room and they have to get dressed out in the hallway, somebody like, oh my God, that's horrible. Like, how could you do that?
That's so much pressure.
To me, to
Yeah.
me, that's helping them become better people.
I
Ultimately.
agree. We're
Now,
saying the same thing. I'm on the
yeah,
same page
yeah.
with you here.
Yeah,
This is
no,
what
but
this is what I mean. Yeah.
but yeah, no, and again, I will say that, I think inherently I do these kind of things, but I don't think it was overnight. It's 35 years of being in front of really good people and then mimicking the really good coaches that I
Right.
had.
Well,
I'm like,
it's
wow, I
basically
really
true.
liked what that guy did.
Right.
Or whoa, and listen, I'm sure there's plenty of players that play for me are like, I will never do that because I didn't like that.
Look, I can
That's
tell you
fine.
this. I can tell you this right now, and this will help us merge into parenting.
Right.
I believe that I have had in my youth hockey journey, I had more, I don't want to say bad coaches, but I had more below par coaches than I had above par coaches. I had several par, but most of my coaching philosophy, Mike, and look, I'm not patting myself on the back, but I have to say this, I've had a lot of success with my coaching. Most of it was born as a reaction to the below par coaches of what I don't want to do.
Mm.
Right. The above par coaches impacted me extremely. Okay. Like the core values, things that have set me on the path of success came from them. But I learned more probably from the below par coaches than the above par coaches. In fact, in the book I referenced earlier, I thank both. I thank all of them. I genuinely thank all of them. Like when I had the below par coaches at the time, it was probably pretty painful, and there's a lot of pressure. But at this point, I'm so thankful that I was able to experience some of those situations because it taught me what not to do or how to deal with things in real life. And I'll tell you this, parents, as we segue into you, a lot of the pressure that I felt going through that at 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, when I was in my 20s, I was well prepared for the real pressure of life, which I'm going to say it, Mike, life pressure makes hockey pressure look silly once you're out. All right. It's not even close. And I will say this, I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial here or might make some people upset. When it comes from pressure with hockey, parents, you are the reason for most of it, or you are the reason your kid is not prepared to deal with it. And you need to look at yourself. I know that is a hot take. I know that is a tough thing to hear. I want to say first and foremost, I look at myself a lot with my own kids and wonder, is it me? I'm not excusing bad coaching. But as Mike said in the last segment, you are with your kid a majority of the time. How you help them or guide them through pressure is going to teach them how to deal with pressure. There's no coach on the planet that is going to have more impact than you on your kids. We've talked about this before. How you respond to that pressure with your kid. I'll give you a real easy example. Bobby's not passing the puck. He's a puck hog. And your kid could have had 5 goals if that kid passed the puck. And your kid's not able to score because Bobby won't pass the puck. We've all been there. What are you saying to your kid in the car? You shouldn't be talking to them in the car, but what are you saying to your kid after that game? Are you saying, well, if Bobby would pass more, you'd have more goals, and Bobby's to blame, and Bobby's the reason that you're not getting more ice time? And if you start doing that, you're creating the pressure. What you should be saying, again, my opinion, is okay, Bobby doesn't pass the puck. You can establish that. What are you going to do to respond to that? How are you going to play differently to complement that? Is Bobby creating rebounds? Is Bobby doing this? Would you like to have a conversation with your coach? The kid, parents, not you. All right. How you guide them through the pressure is so important for later on. Parents, when your kid hurts, you hurt. When your kid's feeling pressure, you feel pressure. You've got to be insanely in tune with that and be very conscious of how you respond to that pressure. Look, there are things that are 100% wrong in youth sports. I'm not telling you not to stand up and support your kid or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going extreme. I'm just talking about the normal pressures of having a bad game. Bobby has a bad game. What are you saying to them? You create a lot of the pressure and you're teaching them how to deal with pressure. And you have to audit yourself. Mike, I'd love your thoughts on that. Again, blame it. I do want to say this. I'm not blaming parents for everything. That's not what I'm trying to say. Okay. I'm just saying a majority of pressure that happens to your kids and how they internalize that comes from you and how you've brought them up. And it's okay. It's okay. There's no perfect parents. None of us. Right. But you've got to find a way to help them navigate that. Mike Bonelli.
Yeah, I mean, you think about how a parent says, "Oh my God, my son's so intimidated by this coach, or he's intimidated by the moment, or he's intimidated by like he shrinks." And like as the writer said, right, that they kind of he shrinks on the ice once he knows somebody's
Right.
watching him or critiquing him. But just as we expect coaches to do a lot for our kids, parents have to coach our kids. Like, and we have to coach and say, well, okay, this is that. Like, it's almost like, we just talked about how coaches need to find what motivates kids. We as parents got to find out what motivates coaches. And we have to say, like, okay, this coach hates soft players. Oh, what do you mean by soft player? He just hates players that bitch and moan and go in the corners and don't want to get hard and dirty. But again, we've listened to our Kids Play Hockey podcast for the last couple of years. You've done your research. You've done the buyer beware. You've found the organization that has the greatest coaches. You have all this stuff. You've done all this stuff as a parent. You're supposed to be doing, right? And now you're like, oh my God, my kid's so intimidated by this coach. Okay, well, now you're in the system. You've chosen to be here.
You're there. Yeah.
You're there. So now as a parent, because you're with your kids 80%, 90% more than the dad or mom volunteering their time to come coach your kid, then you need to find a way to go, okay, well, what motivates this guy or girl? And what can my son, how can I coach my son to be more proactive in getting the attention of the coach? And how can I coach my son to get noticed, not by, picking up pucks after practice and being polite, shaking
That's just the right thing to do. Yeah.
Those are things to do. But just like saying, like making sure the kid knows when he's talking to the coach, like, coach, I completely understand what you want us to do out there. Please give me some feedback. Was I forechecking the right way, or was I putting myself in a good position to be there? Or, hey, do you want me to be aggressive on defense, or do you want me to be, do you want me to lay back and wait for the play to come to me? Because I know you really like aggressive players, but I don't feel like I have the talent to be able to get in there. And then hopefully a coach will say, I don't care about the talent. You get in there. If you make a mistake, don't worry about it. We're gonna, or you're gonna have a coach say, you make one mistake, you will sit the rest of this game. And if that doesn't intimidate a kid, I don't know what does. Right. And then, so now we go back to the parents. So now you have that opportunity, mom and dad. Kid gets in the car. Kid made a mistake, sat the game. You can either be like, oh boy, well, we got to rectify the mistake by what you're doing. Or you can say, this coach is an idiot.
He sucks.
Should have never sat you. See, he sucks. So he didn't suck 3 months ago when you tried out for him.
Right.
And
he was the best coach in the area.
He was the best coach in the whole country 3 months ago.
Right.
So now you have to say, okay, well, this is a learning opportunity. And I think what parents can do, which I find is hard to do, even as a parent myself, is to not look at Friday to Sunday as a life. It's just one weekend. It's one game, 10 shifts. It doesn't define who you are.
You won't even remember it in a month.
You won't even remember it. Or you could allow that to be the springboard to having misery.
Right.
And hate.
And pressure.
And pressure. You want to build pressure? Then it's like anything else. You're hello. I can't even use a good cat cooking analogy. Maybe a crock pot, right? You don't want to. You just want to open up the top of the pot. You got to let the pressure out.
You're gonna get burned.
You'll get burned, right? You just got to say, wait, oof, breathe, and then look and say, okay, let's evaluate the situation. The situation was my son got sat. Why? He took a horrible penalty with 1:30 left in the second period when the coach said, you cannot take a penalty.
Right.
All right, but I didn't really take a penalty. I was skating from the puck and the kid tripped over my stick. Like, so now all that pressure comes on the kid. Like, that's my fault. The game's my fault. We lost because it's my fault. And now as a parent, you can't make excuses, but you have to say, okay, well, let's work this out. This is one weekend of your life. Like I said, 6 shifts. It's one game. Just don't allow those things to compound.
I'll say this too. Look, if you're listening to this show, you're probably not the type of parent that does too much of the negative pressure building. Okay. Like last season, I saw a dad. I saw a dad. I was there yelling at his kid to get off the ice from the stands. And he thought it was funny as hell. And I remember I didn't think it was that funny. I thought, like, what are you doing? Like, he was trying to impress kind of the other parents, I think, a little bit. And I was appalled. I was just like, Jesus, like what is your kid must think? Oh, he knows I'm joking. I don't think he does because he got off the ice. You know what I mean? Like,
this was during a game?
This was during a game. And I was really just not happy with it. I was a dad in the stands. I didn't say anything. I was just like, wow, man, he's like, get off the ice, you suck. I mean, he said that. 2023, when this was done. Someone said that.
Yeah.
All right. Now, with that said, look, a few things.
I've thought that a couple of times. But...
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Look, we all think it.
I'm like,
right? That doesn't mean you say it to your own kid.
Please find a way to get off the ice. Just
of course we've all thought that, right? But like, look, 2 things I want to say. Parents, everything that happens to your kid in youth sports is an opportunity. Not everything's going to feel great. I think we misconstrue the thing. Well, opportunity is he's going to get a chance to play and it's going to be great. That's an opportunity. Getting sat is also an opportunity. It's all an opportunity, depending on how you look at it. I'm begging you parents to convey that to your children. When this didn't feel good, I got sat, I blew the game, I lost the game. It's an opportunity. What did you learn from this event? First question you should ask. What can you do to work harder to change that? Okay, if your kid falls into that, I don't know, I'm never going to be good enough, help them through that. That's an opportunity. Because, Mike, I'm going to make a quick point here. The beauty of sports in general, especially youth sports, is you typically get another shift, or you get another team, or you get another chance constantly, over and over again. In real life, you're fired. And that's it. You don't get another chance. You just get fired, and it's over. And if your kid can't deal with the pressure of that, the kid's going to most likely get fired. Or if you want to go a little younger, you got a C- on the test. All right. And you don't know how to deal with getting any kind of adversity. A lot of examples of this. Your kid will deal with this over and over. Parents, think about your life. We deal with pressures like this every day. God bless you all. All right. And the pressures of real life, Mike, people dying, people getting sick, losing work, economically, election. I mean, the pressures of real life make hockey seem like a golden land of beauty, even the bad times. All right. Did you want to comment on that? I got one more thing.
As you're saying this, I'm thinking about, the demographic maybe of the audience that we have. Right. And sure. I think, sometimes there's plenty of people that are really very successful and that believe that the pressure is what builds the diamond, right? Like you gotta have that pressure. Like I had that pressure, you will have that pressure. Right. But I think it's all about like going back to the original premise of, well, then you, if you're with your kid all the time, then you need to know how much pressure that kid can be under. Like you need to know where that threshold is, because if you can't communicate that to yourself, then it's great. Listen, because you'll have a lot of, like I said, I've been talking to so many dads and moms that no, you can't, like, oh, I can't believe they don't keep score at AU hockey. This is ridiculous. Like these kids need to learn how to lose and what it's like to lose.
They will.
I go, they will. Next year. But I say, but I think it's just a matter of like, yeah, but is that every kid? Like, is it your kid? Okay, that's fine. Then you need to then this is where the parent conversation comes in and the discussions come in and about how you can find ways to make sure your kid's not, buckling under the pressure, or, if they're able to just kind of float through it, like there is no pressure. Okay, God help, that's great. But I just think, I think the premise that you've got to have so much pressure, and like the tiger moms of the world that are like, you're a failure if you come home with a C. There's the I'm sure there are many children that thrive and can handle that. I'm sure there are, but that's where it comes. You need to know your kid, and I think that's where it
Mike,
comes back to the
it's also
parent.
in the messaging. Like, look, in my household, and again, this is just us. C's are not okay. All right. Like, we're not looking for you to get C's. But the question I often ask is, I need you to be honest with me. Did you do everything you could to prepare for this test? And do not lie to me. Did you study? Did you do the work? Did you do the assignments? Did you pay attention in class? Because if the answer is no, and it always is no, if you didn't do it right. And this is the trust. And look, I'm not saying my kids are always honest with me, everybody listening. Don't get me wrong. I'm not no perfect parents, but that's the message that I want them to leave that conversation with. I don't want them leaving with, if you don't get an A, you're not worth shit. That's not what I'm trying to convey. I'm trying to convey, if you didn't do the work, you're not going to earn an A. And C work is not acceptable. Work, C work, not the C grade. We don't accept that here in this house. You will do the work. That's my version, I guess, of being hard on my kids. And again, look, guys, if you had a
Yeah,
microscope
what's
on
that
me,
thing you see all the time? And don't complain about the ice time you don't get when you don't put the work in to get it.
yeah.
Don't
Look,
complain about what your circumstances are, because that's what they are. And again, going back to like the academic analogy, if there's support needed, or you're getting a C because of some other aspect other than you hadn't opened a book or read
right,
anything or
right.
looked at anything or stayed
Actually, if
after
you got to see
school.
without opening the book, that's pretty impressive.
Right,
Imagine
well,
what
that's
would happen if you
but
did
that's
open the book.
right. Well, I have this argument all the time with my
Right,
older son. I'm like, well, I know you did great on that test, but imagine what you could have done if you actually did
right.
anything.
But Mike,
Like,
the point I'm trying to make is this: is that it's like your analogy with the weekend, right? Like, the test is just one test. It's the life lessons. And the thing is this, again, when I got older, that's what I retained. I don't, for the most part, remember any grades I ever got. I remember my parents encouraging me to do better. Now, listen, I have to say this to everybody listening, and I appreciate if you're still listening to this episode. I make plenty of mistakes as a parent. I make mistakes every day. All right. I lose my temper. All right. There are times that I am not proud of how I speak to my children in terms of being yelling at them. I'm always trying to work on it. So I don't want anybody leaving this episode thinking, well, Lee thinks he's got that. I make mistakes all the time, even in coaching. I think what I try and do, though, is learn. And I'm extremely, extremely conscious of when I feel like I made a mistake, and I don't kind of bury it. I've heard a lot of people with that. I just bury my problems and ignore them until they go away. That's just not me. Okay, I'm not saying this for anybody else. But here's kind of my final thought on this, Mike. Right, what I said at the beginning of this segment about kind of it's your fault, right? I said it a little bit like that. Take a minute and think about how you reacted to that. Was your reaction like, no, you're right, or was your reaction like, what are you talking about? If that was your reaction, just take a moment and think about, why did you have that reaction, and think about how your parents probably taught you to have that reaction. Okay, you got to become conscious to your mindset, that the kind of thoughts in your head, that's not who you are, right? That's what you've been conditioned to think. So when it comes to pressure with kids, parents, you play the biggest role. And I want to say this again, and I've seen this a lot. You don't want your kids to feel pain, pressure. I don't want my kids to feel pain or pressure. I don't. But you have to be immensely careful, and this is the juggling act, that your taking of that pain does not overly affect their ability to learn how to deal with it. I hope that makes sense what I just said. You're an adult. You're better at compartmentalizing that pain because you're an adult for the most part. Even if you don't think you're doing it well, you've got the time on your kid. If you're not allowing them to experience the pressure, the stress, the pain, the good too, if you're not allowing them to experience that and you're protecting them from that, you're doing them a disservice to a point. All right. I'm going to say it again, what I said in the beginning. There is a line. All right. Mike, I told you before the show, I had a parent talk to me about a coach that was downright insulting a kid and saying things to a kid that are not acceptable. I'm saying that to you. They are not acceptable things what this coach said to this kid. And I told that parent that you should take action. All right. Because that's not right. All right. But broadly, I don't think that's what most coaches are doing. Okay. Again, I want to leave you with this thought, my friends, on this section. Everything is an opportunity, depending how you guide your child through it. Pain, pressure, it's all an opportunity. To the parent that wrote the letter, I have extreme empathy for you. I do. And I don't know your exact situation. So I don't want you to think I'm saying here to you, oh, your letter is crap. I'm trying to say to you, yeah, take a look at it and try and find the opportunities. If your kid's feeling stressed and intimidated, you got to do the best you can to help them deal with those emotions as the parent. Hopefully the coaches can too. Not all of them can. I'm not going to lie to you. Not all parents can. Help guide them through that because they're going to experience it again. Another disclaimer, Mike, and I love your opinion on this too. Parents, you're going to do what I just said. You're going to try and help them, and your kid's going to have a horrible reaction to it, and they're not going to want to do it. Parents, completely normal. Okay, you know why? Because you're going to have to teach them this lesson 672 times before they get it. As a coach, we get to look at development a lot, probably a lot more than most parents have to think about it. I can't look at the kids on day one of 8U and expect them to be skating proficiently the next practice. It takes the whole season. All right. I had a conversation with a coach last year. If they are skating proficiently, not even amazingly, proficiently at the end of their first year of might, we've done a great job. I'm like, what is that? It's got to be like 60 practices minimum, right?
Yeah.
You got to teach them and you got to teach them again. And then you got to teach them again. It's only at the pro level do I expect my athletes to get something on the first or second try. When it comes to kids, it could take the whole season. When you're raising a kid, it could take 18 freaking years plus some. So you got to kind of believe in the process and rely on your own thing. Really quick, funny story. I'm done with this. When I got to college, Mike, for whatever reason, I started pulling straight A's. I started doing really well. I was like a CB student in high school, drove my parents nuts. Probably didn't display too much responsibility. Hockey was everything to me. And then when I got to college, my parents, they would tell you this, like there was something snapped and you were just a straight arrow. You were really good. Same thing in your work life, your master's. And I remember they said, well, what happened? Like what changed? And I said this to him, and it's now that I'm a parent, it gets funnier and funnier. I said, well, I was always listening to you. I was always listening to you. I just I didn't have to do my laundry, Mom. You were doing it.
Yeah.
Right. So like that's just a little example, but I was always listening. And when I turned 18 and I left the house, I applied everything I had learned. I think there's an immense amount of trust that you have to have in your kids to do that. And look, parents, listen to me. Again, sometimes I wish you could have a microscope. If you could hear the amount of times I have to tell my kids to do something over and over and over again, I'm with you on the struggle. All right. I've got wine in the house, got beer in the house. I need it sometimes at night to calm down. I'm with you on this. Okay.
Yeah.
But I do trust, and I talk to my wife about this all the time. We have to continue to teach the lesson repetitively. He or she is not going to get it the first time. If my kid could just suddenly do their laundry without me teaching them, my God, can you imagine the lack of stress that would cause? Or doing the dishes, or taking the trash out, or making your bed, or cleaning up after yourself, or don't say those words. I could go on forever. I don't care about your Ohio Rizzler, Sigma. You all have heard that listening to this, unless it's like 15 years in the future, then you get your other slang.
Right.
Okay. We did the same crap. That's the other thing. Mike, I'm on the soapbox here. I think I'm having a little therapy session with you right now for myself.
It's all good.
Let me let you talk a little bit here.
Yeah, no. I'm still learning how to clean and do the dishes and
learn how to cook, right?
Yeah, that I can do.
I believe that.
Cleaning is another issue. But again, I think it is that it's not a blame game. It's for the parents. It's not like you failed. It's okay. Wow, let's look at the strategies about how these things work. And I think it's funny because I think in sports we have a lot more um elasticity with school than we do with the sport.
Right.
Like we understand that preschool, the kindergarten, the first grade, the second grade, it's a long process.
Right.
And I really don't. I don't think there's the pressure for the kids to be at grade level or above grade level or the red flags are like below grade level in these early years. And these are the same years these kids are playing hockey. These are 8, 9, 10-year-old boys and girls that are in third and fourth grade, for God's sakes.
Right.
And it's like we don't expect the same. We don't expect them to look like little Einsteins in elementary school, but we do expect our hockey players to look like little Trevor Zegrases.
Right.
And it's so weird
Yeah.
that we go down that route. But again, I think in the bigger scheme of things, us in the hockey world, it's probably more exposed because there's so few people playing hockey.
Sure.
Like it's
Yeah.
just a smaller
That's fair.
community,
Yeah.
and we don't get to see, in soccer and stuff. It's just such a huge community that the variables are huge from rec soccer to competitive elite soccer. In hockey, that it's such a shorter window for people. We've made it that way, but
Well, and more money to spend, which I think adds to the,
that's the pressure on the parents, right? You said,
yeah.
I can't believe I spent $5,000 last year on hockey. You should be higher.
Yeah, that's brutal. I mean, look,
Yeah, but I said,
I
but
use the
you spent
money.
$25,000 in your taxes to go to school in Fairfield County, and you're better. I
That's
mean,
a good point.
what are you
We don't
looking at?
we don't say
How
that
are
to
you
them.
evaluating this?
Yeah, we don't say that to them. You know how many taxes I pay for you to go to this school? Look, I'll tell you this right now. I do share with my kids at times that I'm investing a lot to have them play hockey, but I don't do it for performance ever, ever. It's all about just appreciation of, hey, we're working and we're earning money, and that allows you to do this privilege that we want you to enjoy. That's definitely how we say it to them, but don't take advantage of that.
Yeah,
Like when it's time to go, it's time to go.
yeah, and I try saying the same thing. Like, listen, I want you to be passionate about what you're doing. If this is not something you want to do, then let's find something you really love to do. Because
Absolutely.
I'll spend as much time as you want on that.
Right.
The one thing you
100%.
won't do is just sit around. So,
Yeah.
but find like and again at nauseum, like just you show me this passion, I'm on board.
100%. Right. And look, just to finish this up, it's funny. You gave this metaphor before of the diamond, like the diamond under pressure. And I think we all know parents who think they're diamonds. Just to kind of continue that, Mike, and again, close this section out. Pressure does create diamonds. Pressure can also crush things and
Yeah,
destroy things. The
yeah,
Titanic's falling apart every day. It was an unsinkable ship. All right. It's going to be gone at some point in the future. I
yeah.
also think there's a lot of people that think they're diamonds and you're a cubic zirconia. Okay. You were not formed under pressure. You're not as sharp as you think. The problem is you might not be conscious to that.
My
Right. So
private coach told me I was a diamond.
yeah, maybe you are. No, you know what I'm trying to say, parents, is that,
Yeah,
yeah, like the forming of a diamond, just to use that metaphor, I'm a big metaphor guy. It has to be done perfectly to form the diamond. And I'm trying to say that none of us are perfect. So
right,
I don't think the goal is, oh, let me get all the pressure to make the diamond, because you're probably going to end up crushing your kid. It's more or less of how do you manage the pressure so you don't crush yourself. All right.
right.
And I bet you a diamond comes out of that. Um, Moving on to our third thing. And again, well, actually, before I do that, again, parents, coaches listening, you have any opinions, this is an open door conversation. Please feel free to email us, team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. If you agree, if you disagree, if you have a story you want to share. I don't want anyone listening to this to think that we're not open to feedback or a conversation. That is the whole point of this podcast. Okay. So feel free to do that. But let's talk about scouts for a minute. And again, if your kid's 10, don't turn away, because I have heard about the scouts that come to 10U games, Mike, which is a fallacy. It's not a thing. There are no scouts at 10U games. Legally, they can't be there anyway, much less going up to
What
16U
you
and
want
so
to
forth.
be. Yeah.
But scouts, the pressure from scouts. So I'm gonna dive into this from the player perspective first. And Mike can actually speak to it from a scout perspective. I've done some scouting, but not to the level you have. But Here's the deal, players. If you're at an age, or even if you believe someone is watching you, and that you have to do something special while they're there, even if that's true and you do need to do something special, it all comes from practice and muscle memory and the early mornings and putting in the time, and it'll happen somewhat automatically. Your competitiveness levels on a day you think a scout is there might elevate, but your performance levels most likely not going to elevate 1,000% because a scout's there. That's done through the work that you do away from the games. All right. It's I'm gonna give the most common one. Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant worked harder than anyone away from the games. Michael Jordan, I believe, used to do a full workout before a game. He was so prepared. Kobe was so prepared. You hear about the 3 practices a day, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and guys are coming back from the night out, and he's already finished the gym session. He never had to rely on the talent to take over. I mean, sorry, the talent to like elevate in the game. It was always elevated. He did have to rely on his competitive nature to elevate, to get him to the level he wanted to be mentally. So when it comes to scouts, the work you put in now is how you impress a scout, and also obviously who you are as a person, and rely on it. Now, Mike, do you want to comment on that before we actually flip this onto the scouts themselves?
No, I mean, I think as a player, um, and you're in the world of getting scouted, and to Lee's point, and even if you're a young kid and you think like somebody's coming to, your parents find out somebody's coming to watch you because they're trying to, poach you for another team or
Yeah,
something
which
like
is a
that.
great thing, by the way, if
Yeah,
someone's
yeah.
coming
I
to
mean,
watch
if
you.
that's the case, then that's great. But 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old players, really good scouts aren't going to look, they're not looking at a snapshot anyway. There is no, they're really good scouts, any scout that's working and getting paid as a scout is not judging you on one game or one
Right.
shift or anything anyway. They're judging you on a body of work because they've got to invest the amount of time they put into you. That's got to last their boss a long time. The investment going into you is going to be, they're going to do their research. It's you're getting a background check. You're getting you're getting people say, hey, what does this kid do, at practice, or how's he, like me, I don't think I ever recruited a college player, I'm trying to remember now, without ever having seen them anonymously at practice. I don't think I did. And it wasn't, he's like, the games were irrelevant to me. Yeah, they're good players. Yeah, all these guys are good. They're all
Right.
good. I
Right.
mean, look at these players, like, oh my God. And the kid that's that good, all the other scouts are looking at the kid too. So it didn't matter. Like everybody knows the kid's good. So I want to know, like, what's he doing when the coach yells at him? I want to know how he reacts to his teammates. I want to know how, all these other things. And but again, and so if you want to put pressure on a kid, um, the pressure is you better be a good person all the time. And we talked about this in a couple of youth hockey tryouts I had the other day, where we just said, just listen, you're being scouted. So if you're going to allow the pressure to happen when you step on the ice, it might be too late
Right.
because what did you look like when you got out of the car? What did you look like when you walked down the hallway? What did you look like when that scout was in buying a coffee and he overheard you talking to the pro shop guy about how crappy his skate sharpening was or something? Like, so
Character.
it's all about your body of work. So the whole premise of being intimidated and shuddered as in a scouting opportunity, again, it's more about educating yourself to know that it's your body of work. It's the whole course of what you're doing. It's not like we talked about earlier. It's not a one weekend snapshot. It's like I even told the older kids I work with, like I have this saying I work with them all the time on, that it's better to be seen at the right time than all the time. Like if you're being seen all the time, your flaws
Gonna
get
be loud.
exposed much
Yeah.
bigger. So make sure you're getting looked at the right time. Be ready, be healthy, be rested. Don't go to a tournament, deathly sick. Because once you get looked at, it's going to be hard to overcome that. Now, that said, the next time they see you, hopefully you're healthy and you're feeling good. But just again, it's not one snapshot when people make judgments on you. It's over a course, especially in the sporting world and in the scouting world.
Yeah. Mike, we recently had someone on that does some scouting, and they had said, yeah, I'm watching you play, but you know what I'm really watching is how your demeanor is after the game, win or lose. How are you treating your
Yeah,
parents? How are your
more.
parents treating everything? They're looking at the whole package. I wrote some notes down here. Look, from a hockey playing standpoint, let's just talk about it because I know everybody wants that kind of information. I do have to say it. Like what you do without the puck is really, really important when being scouting. All right. When you have the puck, it's really easy to watch you. I'm looking at you when you don't have the puck. Keep in mind too, I think with scouting, Mike, we could probably throw in tryouts or evaluations a little bit in this because you are being scouted to make a team,
Right, right. Well, yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right.
I
It's
believe that.
it's not just what you do with the puck. So just building on Mike's, it's all the time type of thing. That's number one. Parents, you play a role in this. You play a role in this. You better have high character. That's all I'll say. Kids, you have to have high character all the time. It's like Mike said, it's an all the time thing, muscle memory thing. Wayne Gretzky, let's just use him for a minute. He seems like a great person all the time. And everybody says he's a better person than he's a hockey player. He's got to turn it on all the time. He has talked about the pressures of being Wayne Gretzky as a young kid. Connor McDavid, follow me. I'm going somewhere with this. Connor McDavid is expected to be the best player in the world all the time. He knows that and he is accepting of that. In fact, in the Stanley Cup final, I remember him saying when the game was on the line, he's like, I have to be the one that finishes it. That's his role. He has an understanding of that role to the point that the pressure probably feels it, but he doesn't play into it too much. It doesn't make him crush. He executes. Now, with that said, and this is where I was going with it, it's extremely likely your kid's not Connor McDavid or Wayne Gretzky, and that's okay. All right. Uh, the point is this: the guys that go first overall, or Wayne Gretzky obviously didn't get drafted. He played in the WHA before he could even be drafted, which is professional. You can look that up. When you're to that level, it's expected to be able to deal with that. So I don't know why we don't emulate that with every kid. It's not so much about what you do in this one moment, as Mike said. It's the type of person you are. It's the character you have. It's your talent that's built over time, right? So I think about again with my own children at evaluations. And look, I see a lot of different parents at evals and tryouts with a lot of different emotions. I've been asked, like, what do you tell your kid? Because I think a lot of parents, they might not say it, but like, well, my kid doesn't make that AAA team, that AA team, this, and this. All I want my kid to tell me, and parents, I'm not saying I don't want my kid to make the top team. That's not where I'm going with this. Of course I do. All right. I mean, I really want them to make the team where they're going to develop the most, but yeah, you want them to make the best team possible. It's natural. Okay. I just want my kids to be able to look at me and say, Dad, I did the best I could. I did everything I could. I didn't leave anything out there. You want to talk about taking the pressure off them? That's what you want them to be saying. All right. If they come off the ice and say I did everything I could, but Johnny did better, and he's going to make the spot. Now I'm not going to make the team because he did that. Whoa, 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 whoa! You don't control that other kid. You have no control over that. You only have control over yourself. Did you do the best that you could do? Or Mike, and this happens too. I didn't have a great tryout today, Dad. I did not do the best I could, and I made a lot of mistakes. I think it's going to affect me. It's all an opportunity. All right, you look. Hey, you might not make the team you want to make now. All right. What are we going to do about that? Are we going to work hard? Now now you have this experience. Let's give a great example that's happening right now. Simone Biles, greatest gymnast in the world, left the 2020 Olympics. People called her a failure and that she was the amount of crap they said about her, which was all ridiculous. Quitter was so unfounded. That's another topic.
Right.
What is she doing right now? She's competing her ass off and is going to win a bunch of gold medals because that pressure isn't about you to her. It's about what she can do for herself. It's a great example. All right. She did not accomplish what she wanted. She did not win medals. She left the team. And now she is back there 3 years later because of the way the Olympics worked in 2021, competing again. That's someone with high character. And if you think she's not feeling pressure to win, you're crazy. There's a great documentary about her right now. She talks about the pressure. She feels it all the time. She just knows how to deal with it. All right. With good and bad outcomes. So when it comes to your kid with being watched, I'll just say that with scouts.
Right.
Did you do the best you could? That's really all you control. You can't do anything else. Do you have high character? Mike, one of the things I always say with evals and scouts, did you go shake their hand? Did you go introduce yourself? Did you pick up the pucks afterwards? Is this guaranteeing you a spot on a team? Not at all, but it's high character because what you do today may affect you 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Okay. I remember the kids that do that. I remember it. And if they don't have the talent to make my team, that's okay. I remember it. All right. And trust me, you get my good graces when you do things like that. I recognize things like that. Mike, I do want to turn this a little bit towards the scouts because you had made some good points when we discussed this before the show about, should scouts tell coaches they're coming, tell kids they're coming? I mean, that creates pressure in its own self. Can also reduce pressure depending how you look at it. So, from a scout standpoint, what are the different approaches and how should you look at that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the level of play, right? I mean, now today's scouts have such unique opportunities to use Instat and use
Yeah,
Huddle and video and not never leave their
you don't even have
office.
to go.
So if you want to see, and I think that today's game just leads itself to the fact that if everybody knows the best players, like so when you're scouting, you're not scouting. You're not looking for the best talent on the ice. You kind of know who the best talent is on the ice. Most people that are scouting for prep school or college or juniors or, a select team, they're looking to fill roster spots. They're looking for, role players. They're looking for how does this player fit into what I have as a lineup? It's not like youth hockey, right? Where, the first 15 kids out of the best kids, they make the team and the evaluators say, oh, these kids are all tens and these kids are all eights and these kids are all sixes. You're finding holes to fill in your rosters. So I think it's a little different from a scouting perspective. Now, as far as what can scouts do to help players perform better, maybe that scout wants to say, hey, Lee, I'm going to be there tonight. Big game. Going to hope you're going to perform and watch that kid fold under pressure. Connor McDavid's not falling under pressure, but he's proven that, right? Like so, but some players may. Some people, I've seen it where I've seen players that know somebody else is in the stands to watch a teammate and they buckle under the pressure or they find the pressure like I can't believe he's here to watch that player and not watching me. Like
Yeah.
how come they're not watching me? So then that's to your point, all those little things that you have to do. I'll give you a real quick story. When I was coaching in college, and when you're coaching in Division III college, you're also the scout and the recruiter
Yeah.
and
The
the bus
marketing
driver.
director. And
So when I drove, I mean, this is before GPS and everything, right? So I drove all the way up to Maine to watch a kid play, and he sat the whole game, and he didn't play because the coach, he got in trouble in school that day, and coach decided not to play him. This is a kid I'm trying to get to go play college hockey, and ironically, I ended up getting his teammate.
right.
I'm like, look at this kid. This kid's unbelievable. Nobody's seen this kid play, and so I got an opportunity to see a kid play that I never would have went to play in the first place because he wasn't on the radar, right? But again, in that particular game, he did well enough for me to want to follow up.
You know,
And I'm like, wow, that really stood out to me. Now, that might have
yeah.
been being at the right place at the right time, but as a scout, I don't know, most scouts aren't, unless you're at a really exceptional level and you have some kind of relationship with the parents, like you're not calling the mom and dad ahead of time. You're like, hey, listen, I'm going to be there this weekend. And there are some scouts like, hey, I'm going to be at the Beantown Classic all weekend. Please stop in and say hello to me. Can't wait to meet your son. But I mean, but again, but then as a parent, going back to what the parents need to do, you need to set and diminish, like, set those expectations of what that weekend might look like, because it all can't be about me now, because that even looks worse
Right.
for a scout. And it's just a matter of saying, okay, understand, probably a big weekend for people to be watching you. You can say all you want. Oh, it's just like every other weekend. It's not. Just be aware of that, and then you can coach that into your kids. And as a coach, you can prepare your kids for those moments as well.
Well, look, we're talking about pressure. You learn to deal with this pressure in 8U and 10U so that when you're in 18U, you have the ability to deal with it. The other thing too is, Mike, I just wrote this down. This is for everybody. You have no control. None. You have no control over what these people are watching or doing or where they're at and when they're there. None.
Right.
So with that logic, it makes no sense to spend too much time worrying about it. It actually makes sense to make no time worrying about it. What you have control over is your work ethic. What you have control over is your mindset and your diet, what you put in your body, both food and knowledge, right? You might have a little bit of influence with like the shaking the ref's hands and picking up the puck, but you have no control over the people watching your kids from a scouting standpoint. All right.
Right.
In terms of what they're going to take away from the game. All right. You have control over what you do on the ice and what you do off the ice. Another quick story for you, to kind of round this episode out. I suffered a severe injury my senior year of high school, which severely hurt my ability to be scouted. All right. And it was an interesting time because I was being scouted prior to this injury. And what I did was when I was injured, I took up writing a little bit. Not for everybody, it's just my story. I looked up articles, I read, I did everything I could to find as much knowledge as I could. And I recovered. I really, really worked hard on recovering. And the only chance that I had to kind of be looked at was like the spring summer league, kind of college league. And I hadn't played my senior year. And I came back and I would say I was actually better than I was before I got injured, but I had always had issues scoring at that time in my life. I just was not a great goal scorer. So I leaned into my playmaking ability and a mix of things that they were following my recovery. They were following that spring league, that summer league. They were reading the articles I wrote and they could see that I was a playmaker. I was recruited because of those things.
Yeah.
All right. And I was always an incredibly fast skater, which was obviously a feather in my cap, but I was recruited to be a playmaker. The funny part about this is when I was a scout for college, I remember I went to a tournament one time, Mike, and there was this kid, but probably was hyper focused on him because of this. Making, I mean, he's a playmaker. He's just making assists, but a lot of them were second assists, but he was making them. And I'm thinking, like, I'll never get this kid. Nobody had him on the radar. I was blown away. I recruited this kid. He came to the school I coached at. He was the second leading goal scorer. I'm sorry, second leading point scorer on the team, right? Nobody knows him because I think it's because they were all second assists. And now, listen, I was probably a little more keenly aware of that because of the way I played. But this
Right.
goes to show you how little control you have, right? It was just the right place, right time. The kid impressed me. I recruited him. He came to the school, and he was a really big part of our offense, right? You just don't know how these things are going to play out. So, just again, the thought here how you prepare players off the ice, on the ice, practice, all the different opportunities you have through your youth hockey career culminate when you're being scouted. I am not saying that you should not have an elevated attitude if you know a scout is there. I'm saying it's not going to affect your play to the point that you're going to become Connor McDavid for a day. Connor McDavid's Connor McDavid because he's always Connor McDavid. I hope that equation makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. You can have a great game, but it's because of the time you put in. It's because of the work you put in. All
Yeah.
right.
And good scouts know you're nervous. Like really good scouts know, okay, this kid's a little nervous. He's a little, there's
Sure. That's a
a lot of
great point.
pressure. It's a big piece. I think we can grow out of that. That might not be who the kid is all the time. Like really good scouts that start to understand like personalities and understand players and understand, the nuances of the game. Will know really do know that well, good. I want a little, you talk any pro athlete, like you don't want them to have a little butterfly. You want them to be a little
Yeah.
nervous.
How do you perform with that? Yeah.
Jumping on the ice for the Stanley Cup, you better be a little like, oh my God, like, this is a big deal. Like this is unbelievable to me. Like, so even if you're 8 years old and you're going for a weekend, the finals of a tournament, just listen, butterflies are good and being nervous is good and wanting to embrace that moment is good. But it all comes down to, your your biggest psychologist and physiologist and motivator and is your parents. It's whoever's driving you most of the time to these games and communicating with you the most. And then you need to leverage all the people in that sphere and say, well, how do I work with all these people to make sure that my son or daughter, is having the best experience, is motivated, is enjoying the game, is safe, and wants to return.
It's great points, Mike. And again, like, yeah, the just building on that, the ability to have butterflies and deal with pressure comes from experience.
Yeah.
All right. It comes
You
from
don't really
experience.
get butterflies, people that never play in big games.
Right. Well, and here's the thing too. It's like look, I I get to do a lot of public speaking. I get to do things where I'm in front of people all the time. I'd be lying to y'all if I didn't say I get butterflies before every event I do. I'm so aware of them and I know how to deal with them. I go on stage and I do what I got to do. But
Right.
they're still there. I just have experience with them now. Right? So I mean, and I don't expect them to ever go away. They've gotten less and less over time, but I feel them like every performance, right? Even every time I step on the ice, there's not nerves when I step on the ice. There's actually peace, but there's the anticipation of the game that I'm about to play in.
Right.
It comes over time. So you got to develop those. And again, rounding this out, If you don't allow coaches, parents, scouts, if you don't allow your kids to experience those emotions, they will not learn. If you don't allow them to navigate the pressure, and you can be their guide, you can grab them by the hand and help them through this, or you can encourage them from behind and say, you got this, walk through the pressure. If you're not doing that and you are shielding them from the pressure,
Yeah.
you are not helping them. You're helping yourself. They need to learn how to deal with it. The greatest opportunity, the ROI on youth hockey, is the life lessons they will learn. If your kid gets to play high school and beyond, awesome. God bless them. It's wonderful. I'm not downplaying it, but we all have to play beer league at some point. And the life lessons you learn, that's the ROI. I am so thankful for this game every day, for the lessons it's taught me, and a lot of them were painful. But I am at a point of gratitude with it now. And we want that for all of you, right, Mike? I mean, that's at the end of the day what we want you to experience. Not all fun, not all sunshine and rainbows. Life will hit you down if you let it. I'm not going to do the whole Rocky speech from Philadelphia.
No, that's the adversity is the key to creating great people. So I think it's great. I think it's all part of why we put kids in sports. I hope.
I agree, Mike. I'm going to say it. I think this episode was a diamond. I think we talked about pressure and we made a diamond. I think that's what happened here today.
Perfect.
I do want to say to everybody.
Good question. Not easy to answer, but fun to explore.
It was. And again, we're just two schmucks discussing this right now. If you out there have any other opinions, thoughts, anything, email us, team@ourkidsplayhockey.com, or jump on Facebook, hit our Facebook group. It's called Our Kids Play Hockey. That's pretty much where you have to look for us. But to continue the conversation, there's everything. Above all, Mike and I want to thank you for your trust in listening to this episode. We acknowledge every day the community that we're building here, and that it means a lot to us that we're allowed to come onto your speakers or your YouTube channel if you're watching this, and us to just share some information that we've experienced along the way, because that's what we're trying to do, is just share what we've learned to make a better hockey community for tomorrow. Remember, you're not crazy. The hockey community is crazy, and we're glad that you're here with us. That's going to do it for this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to catch the next one. We'll see you next time. Have a great week, everybody. Take care. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.